Hey everyone, this is Willow at Two Toe Farm. I wanted to give everybody an update on how things are growing, as well as go over some essentials for having a permaculture yard. It is the first week of May here in St. Louis, and it is hard to believe that this place less than 1 year ago was a completely blank grassy lawn. I've been working really hard to transform this into a permaculture oasis for me and my ducks. I wanted to document how far things have come along, but also give you some tips on permaculture plants that I think are essential. So come along for a stroll through the garden and let me show you what I got. I've planted almost everything except for a few basils there. Here I've got one of our raised beds with our peppers and tomatoes. They have almost doubled in size in the last week and a half, which is phenomenal. With just a quick glance around, you can see that I have trees of various sizes as well as 10 raised beds of different sizes and shapes. The two that are most recent we actually built using wood reclaimed from the deck that we had torn down, and I filled them halfway with mulch and then half with soil so that mulch can break down with some compost and mushroom inoculation. Here we have Blueberry Lane with some blackberries and grapes in the back. The blueberries are doing fabulous. I actually dug all of these plants up from Michigan last year and they have done great, just like that cherry tree. Here are some grapevines that you can see little flowers and fruit forming. I have this climbing up along the fence with this blackberry cane as well up behind the pond. These blackberries have been blooming for weeks now, and I've actually been trellising them up against this fence using little eye hooks. Berries and grapes are a great use of vertical space, so I would definitely include these in your garden. As long as you keep them elevated some way, they're less likely to spread in an invasive or uncontrolled way. And all 8 or 9 of these plants came from the same 2 plants in Michigan that I was able to propagate and split. Not only do they attract pollinators, but they give fruit that is bigger than my thumb. Here in one of the raised beds, I have a mix of different successions of brassicas and then mustard greens, as well as some peas. I interplanted these little cauliflowers into the mustard so that they're getting a little extra protection and maximizing production. This is actually Swiss chard that overwintered here. I could not believe it. It is the spinach variety, and I'm really excited to collect some seed, as well as from this mache here, or corn salad, that also overwintered. And then behind that are some kohlrabi. Here's another raised bed with some sweet potato and broccoli intermixed. I'm really excited about the sweet potatoes. Of course, I ran out of room in our raised bed, so we had a surplus of peppers. We decided that is something really important for us to grow because we go through so much. So I actually intermixed them into my perennial bed with some tomatoes in the back. Back there are some honeyberry bushes I got this year that I'm really excited about, and this is just another perspective of how you can maximize your space. Those are some Jerusalem artichokes that I was careful to keep in containers because I know they can spread pretty wild. Back there's an elderberry underneath that red bud, and again here's just the peppers and tomatoes intermixed. Back here along the back fence, my columnar apples are doing great. They're fruiting. I have some grapes intermixed with some flowers and of course garlic. This is also where I have my wine cap mushrooms inoculated into the mulch, and I have already picked about 4 pounds of them this spring. Mushrooms are definitely a permaculture essential for me because not only are they helping the garden, but they're giving you a product. Here I'm doing a perennial potato experiment mixed in with some other greens, and here's another potato tower, again trying to maximize space. Along this side of the garden is my raspberry and strawberry and asparagus bed. Here I also have mushroom logs and wine cap inoculation in this bed. Here is one of the caps that I found tucked under this strawberry plant. And you can see some bugs got to the cap a little bit, but honestly, not a bad find. I absolutely love coming out here every morning and evening to do a little mushroom hunting. Also in this bed is more garlic because I sneak that in just about everywhere I can. And down here I actually found some more treasures. These are wine cap mushrooms that are just starting to pop up. This is actually a great time to pick them when their caps have not fully opened. Here you can see them just starting to come out of the mulch. To grow these mushrooms, all you need is some straw and wood chips, and you can even layer some cardboard in there. And they will come up typically at least twice a year, once in the spring when it's nice and rainy, and then again in the fall up until that first freeze. And just like other mushrooms, they're only really good for a short window of time, so make sure you're checking everywhere, even under the foliage. But once planted, they'll be producing for many, many years. So as you know, permaculture is all about layers. And one of the easiest layers of ground cover is strawberries. They are extremely prolific and will pretty much cover any space that you allow them. And here are some ever-bearing raspberries. Again, these are only a year old and they're already fruiting by the gallon. Here we have a raised bed of brassicas and one of those very pesky cabbage moths that I'm battling. You can see some mushrooms popping up in this bed as well. They are not the edible variety, unfortunately, although I did have some almond mushrooms there last year. Here is another bed with some cucumbers and peas, as well as some summer squash I will be staking up. A really easy way to maximize space is to stake up your zucchini and other summer squash. Vining annuals are a great way to use as either a ground cover or for vertical gardening. Here I have some winter squash and pumpkins that I am going to be training up on the duck run, which will provide them some extra shade when it gets really, really hot here. Here's just another angle of the garden with all the raised beds. Of course, this is always going to be a work in progress, and I'm always trying to make it a little bit better, but I can't wait to see it evolve over the next few years. Another permaculture essential is to have good aeration, and my ducks do an excellent job of that, as well as eating some slugs. You do have to be careful with ducks or other pets in the garden though, because they will eat your plants. One of the biggest reasons I opted for raised beds instead of just in-ground gardens was to have my ducks coexist within the garden, and I needed to have a height difference for that to work out. Of course, I've gone over this in other videos, but having ducks is also a great source of fertilizer, as they poop a lot and it has a lot of nitrogen in it. Here I have a citrus tree, which obviously lives in a pot, but I'm excited to have a greenhouse where I can store these over winter and hopefully get lots of citrus. Moving towards the front of the yard, here I have an elderberry, and that's another essential for me. They are great at providing shade and privacy. They grow very fast, and they have multiple uses. Also along this side yard is a row of lavender, currant bushes, and hazelnuts. All three of these are also essentials for me because I use lavender for everything. Currants are a great self-containing shrubbing plant that will produce lots of fruit. These are black raspberries I also transplanted from Michigan that you can easily train to climb. This is a Juneberry, which is kind of a mid-level bush or tree that produces lots of fruit. And then I also have lots of herbs in here, which are also essential components. Pay attention to what you use in the kitchen so that you know what to prioritize in your perennial beds. Right there was a prickly pear, which I am curious if I'll ever get fruit from, but my neighbors do, so we'll see. This is a Nanking sweet cherry bush, and that is a great alternative if you don't have the space for a full tree. Here you can see my day's harvest of wine caps, which I later turned into a soup. Thanks for joining me as I walk through the garden, and hopefully you got some inspiration for things that you can easily incorporate into your yard, no matter the size. Stay tuned for more garden tours and other videos on how to do permaculture in an urban setting. Happy planting!